So, thank y'all for coming out. Pretty bad weather. I was telling them, like, literally affected my attitude today, and I was mad all day, and I'm still kind of mad, and so here we are.
Glad you're the grumpy interviewer.
Yeah. So it's gonna go well. All right. So Adam and Nicole. So what is Glimpse? That is what y'all are currently working on. So just to set the framework for everybody, what is that? What are you currently doing? What does Glimpse do?
Yeah. So Glimpse is a platform that we've created so that educators can measure what we call education return on investment. So we want to track everything you're doing to impact student achievement, who you're doing it with, and the cost to make sure that we're getting the bang for our buck with our education dollars.
Okay, so your client is a school system. Who are you going after?
Mostly school systems at this point. We can definitely work on the school level, but typically the way the funding pulls down, it's better for us if we get a larger contract working with an entire district.
But all the insights basically flow from, even the buyer, maybe the district, all of the benefactors of the information, the analysis is what's actually happening in the classroom. Those insights go district level to principals and then ultimately down into the classroom to guide instruction better on what's working for students, what's not, based on student outcomes.
Okay, so give an example. Like, what is a program that you're like, this program's going really well? What is a program?
Okay.
Well, it just depends. The trends we kind of see, and kind of our first findings were, one, the schools didn't know all the time everything they had. You know, so they're doing things for math, they're doing things for special education, they're doing things for positive reinforcement. We literally walk into some situations where a school will be outfitted with absolutely everything and not really be using it so much. Technology is a good example of that. And then we'll walk into some schools where you have pockets of teachers who have really found a certain product or process or resource that, you know, they're just really seeing the benefits with their students. I would say it's kind of all over the place.
Okay.
Definitely a lack of consistency if we looked across our customer base.
Okay, cool.
And there's been an explosion, right, of tools and resources available to educators over the past, 20 years, the growth of the internet and that sort of thing. So you got everything from free educational resources to technology companies pumping out different kind of curriculum products and just bombarding, there's some are free, some are paid, all into the classroom. And so there's this wealth of things. It's not just one textbook anymore. So it becomes very murky to understand what are we doing that's actually driving student outcomes versus what's not, and then looking at where it is working, how can we replicate that in other classrooms.
Okay, and y'all are 3-ish years old, and y'all are just in the Southeast. Y'all are, where all are y'all doing this?
Yeah, primarily we're in the Southeast. We started here in Alabama, and we've now moved into Mississippi, Louisiana, and I think we'll have a board meeting in the next couple of weeks to open up Georgia, actually.
Okay, so let's look beginning before Glimpse. So Adam, let's start with you. So you are from Huntsville.
Yeah.
You went to Randolph, and then you went to Auburn, is that right?
Yeah.
And not in business.
No, management information systems.
Yeah, and then UAB. Okay, so what got you into the startup scene?
Let's see. My first company I started was actually in 6th grade. And when I transferred to Randolph, the deal there was you had to purchase your textbooks. And so I noticed after the first year that everybody just ditched their textbooks in the hall. And the next year when you come in, the parents have to buy the used books. So I had the idea of collecting all the books that students would leave, and I archived them and housed them over the summer. And then me and a buddy of mine, we came back in and we actually would run around up and down and undercut the school's prices on the used textbook price. And
Your first check.
Yeah, exactly. Very manual though. So that was kind of the first thing I can remember of falling in love with that.
In 6th grade? That was in 6th grade?
Yeah.
I think you should tell the t-shirt story.
Yeah, so first of all, it's kind of also my first run-in with sort of like legislative issues, because Randolph really hated that. The second year, Marshall Streeter, who some of y'all probably know, he and I did this, and we made a lot of money for young kids. And the school had this surplus of books, and so they banned this practice after that. So they shut us down.
They banned you from doing that?
Yeah. So then the second one was we did a t-shirt business in high school. We realized that we didn't like the fact that seniors only made the senior t-shirt and traditionally would sell them to seniors. So we decided to make senior t-shirts that we would sell to the entire school all the way down into the elementary school. So again, we had ruffled some feathers with the administration because our designs were a little more risque than at the time what Randolph really approved of. So, but it was a great way to learn how to market a product and navigate that. So. Truthfully, that's probably where I fell in love with that. I was in healthcare after U of A Hospital, and then got my first taste in startup world with a medical device company out in Las Vegas.
Yeah, so you moved to Vegas, and how long were you out there?
4.5 years.
And okay, so you had a roommate, and you were just constantly pitching ideas to this roommate, and he would tell you thumbs down, thumbs up, and then you finally got you a thumbs up, right?
Yeah. So,
so what was the thumbs up?
So it's a company called Learning Earnings, and so after watching how this startup went in Las Vegas, I was like, we can totally do this. And every single day at lunch, I just pitch him ideas, and he'd be like, we're not quitting for that. And so finally, he's like, yeah, that's it. And so the concept was I wanted to tie incentives to and deliver incentives to classroom educators that were doing positive reinforcement in the classroom. Because I had a 5th grade teacher at AAA here in Huntsville that ran a microeconomy lesson. And she would solicit all around the city rewards and donations, and then we would earn a virtual currency called McMillan Bucks. She's actually, I think she works up in Burritt now, donating her time. And then you go to the big auction, and it's so great, and like we were super engaged. But the problem is, she was the only teacher that did that because it's very hard to go solicit all those kind of things. So I wanted to make it easy to deliver to any classroom teacher that wanted to incentivize their students. So we created this platform. There's an online banking system. So we had a virtual currency. Each student had checking and savings accounts, so they could learn about money and kind of the concept of that and how to save and work towards goals. And then we partnered with McDonald's, Domino's, Dick's Sporting Goods, those kind of organizations to deliver electronically incentives to these educators as the students were reaching the goals that they're set forth by the teachers. They could redeem them online for various prizes.
It's like Bitcoin for students.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay, a little bit more real.
Just a lot more stable.
Yeah. Okay, all right, so you got out of UAB, went to Vegas, we're doing a startup, he gave you the thumbs up on this idea. How'd you come to the decision of, yeah, I think that's a good enough idea, I'm gonna drop everything and go work on this?
Honestly, we just started pitching potential investors, which we had access to through that startup. And through that, kind of gauged investor interest, because that gives a level of security before you quit your job, on the financial side. But on the other side, we actually built sort of an MVP and put it in one classroom in 4th grade at Whitesburg Elementary in the spring of 2009. And just kind of let it there, like the kids thought they were doing it. They're printing off these tickets with codes on them, entering in, and we were entering in the back end. So it's a very manual process, but simulating, did it work for the 4th grade teacher, Joan May, and then did the kids like it, most importantly? And were they more willing to go above and beyond for her in the classroom? And based on that feedback, we had 7 other teachers in her school that said, we want to do this too. And it wasn't even a product. We were basically buying rewards, and we were shipping them in a box, in this big little box that the kids thought that was coming, the rewards box. And based on that sort of response, we took a lot of feedback, and then over the summer started building out the product and decided we were going to take a run at it.
Yeah. Okay, so then you moved back to Huntsville, and you did that for how long, and then what ended up happening with Learning Earnings?
So we went from that one classroom, and then we had classrooms in 42 states over the next 3 years. It just kind of sort of grew virally from teacher to teacher, and especially those that were doing positive reinforcement and really jumped on board with that. And we switched to start trying to push people to do school-wide versus just individual, to get a lot more consistency year to year. And so we kind of grew that way, and then got acquired 3 years later in 2013 by a education data management company based out of Mobile.
And what was that company called?
It was called STI at the time, but then changed to Chalkable.
Chalkable. Okay, and that's where Nicole comes in. So Nicole, going back, you had a different background where you were not interested in startups. So what's your background? You're from where? Where'd you go to school?
Yeah. So I actually originally from Atlanta, moved down to South Alabama, was in Baldwin County, going through college, putting myself through college, answering a support line for this STI. They had in-house support. So I was doing that when I was young single mom, trying to get through college, and I was secondary ed. And I guess the first thing there at that company is, I never talked to anybody that was happy. So one of the very first lessons are educators are not naturally software trackers, especially 15 years ago when this is, when we're, doing support for STI. And so I guess my first hack, if you will, was I was going through college. I had the early shift or the late shift. People were really upset, and this kind of medium level implementation lady quit. And she quit during my late shift of answering the phone, so she kind of packed up her stuff and left. She had enough. And so I sat in her chair for about 4 days before I told the administration, and they were all off at a conference, that I'd been doing her job. So I was like, the bad news is Michelle quit 4 days ago. Good news is I've already taken her job. So I spent a good part of 15 years. Actually, they convinced me to stay working for them. And so I finished that, worked in implementation, worked in sales, worked in operations, all these different things. And I guess about the time that we acquired Adam's company was in between kind of product management for one of our divisions, student achievement, and heading up the sales department.
So what is STI, or now Chalkable? What did they do? What does a company do?
Yeah, so they're data management, so they handled all the report cards going to schools, all the state reporting, all the schools in Alabama take attendance on that product. So basically just data management for students. We had worked on acquiring an assessment platform. We had built like a student achievement continuous improvement coaching division in that, and then Adam's company was part of 2 acquisitions that we did trying to grow that company. We had been successful but very stagnant, stayed around the same revenue mark for years, and then just kind of drifted on. So
okay, so acquired the company. Y'all 2 meet right away, or how did y'all actually get introduced to each other?
it was really funny. So the dynamic for our company was there was a lot of us that had worked there for a long time, and especially in the administrative, even above me, a lot of people literally have been there for 20 years. So the acquisition came about the same time. We got a new CEO for DC, so our world had kind of been rocked a little bit. So we had this nice family-oriented, almost very successful, but almost ran like lifestyle business. We weren't really on that growth trajectory, and so we get in a meeting that I was not supposed to be in, I don't think, and our new CEO pulls me in at the last minute, and so I'm sitting around the table with new executives because they've taken over our company, and new executives because they've just been acquired. So they're sitting there like, what the heck? And I'm sitting there like, what the heck?
Yeah.
And the old executives are in there, and they're like, oh gosh. So we get in this meeting, and it's so tense because you got the new, you got the old. People are already forming their thoughts about people, and by the end of the meeting, I think Adam and I were the only ones, A, with our heads up, and B, asking questions, which was probably out of ignorance at that point. And so I'm sitting beside him going, who is this guy? Because all the people, all my leaders in the company at that point were obviously in distress. There was about to be a huge turnover, you could tell. And I think we wound up being the only ones talking in that meeting, and that kind of stayed on for the next 3 years.
Yeah, totally. It was kind of the backdrop of those, the company was a private equity backed group, SCI was. And so the fund that was backing them had ended of life, and so they're starting to divest assets. And so they, typically at that time, they'll take anything that they can sell and they'll try to package it up. And usually that means they got to oust sort of the founder type of team or long-term executive crew, and they bring in guys that don't have a lot of the relationships, and they clean it up and cut the waste and all that kind of. So it's very stressful for companies that get put in that situation, and that's exactly what happened. And so we came in on that acquisition and into this group that these people have been working together for 20 years as sort of this like shake it up and get it packaged and get it ready to be sold sort of thing. So it was a very interesting experience.
Yeah.
So Adam, you went from doing your own company to now you what was the phrase? You had all the responsibility, but none of the authority. So what was that like going from?
I spent a good amount of my time convincing him not to quit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so your company's acquired, and now you're working for someone else at this place. What was that like?
It was miserable at times, honestly. So you kind of go into it, and it is kind of like they said, giving up your baby or your firstborn kind of thing when you sell your company. It's like a good news, bad news thing, right? Usually there's some financial good news, but it's bad news in the sense that you're not in control anymore. And you have this vision of the way it goes, and you've developed these relationships with, thousands of teachers across the country that, that have your cell phone, that have your email address. And then all of a sudden, like, these guys come in and it's processed and it's like whatever and trying to drive the business, which is their right to do, but you are tied to that. And so you don't have the responsibility to make it work, but none of the authority to be like, hey, that's not what we should do. And so it creates a lot of problems.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, the entire company was under this dynamic of, a new CEO comes in, all of a sudden every meeting becomes somebody's interview for a position that they'd like to have. So you get a lot of fluff, I guess, in the meeting, and then, Adam probably gets in the position where, there are days where my hands are tied, I can't give the teacher the support he had. Oddly enough, we were going through some of the same things because we were still working at, if a principal from Murphy High School or Matt D. Fowler used to call our CEO personally and say, I can't get my stuff to work, and he was superintendent over Madison. We still worked that way too. And we were going through a similar transition, yet there was not really a lot of unified effort, I guess, amongst our company of, 150 at that point.
Yeah. Okay, so that's 3 years you've been there, and then at what point is Glimpse coming into all of this now? So you've been there for 3 years, and then you're getting close to, so they had some kind of agreement you had to stay there for some amount of time. And so you had the opportunity, and they both...
Got to.
Yeah.
Yeah, supposed to.
Yeah. But they both wanted you, they wanted you to stay. Both of you wanted you to stay. So you go into these meetings, and was Chalkable acquired again? Was that what it was? Or okay, so they were acquired again, and then during that time, tell us about that. What was that like for each of y'all?
We had some point where I think we had, I guess, painfully proven ourselves enough. And, Adam was going through the transition from founder to, he actually became our executive director of corporate strategy. And then I became, oh, you're one of them, to kind of, oh, you're one of us. Very interesting and not always beneficial, in that perspective. But at some point our CEO came to us and said, really appreciate the effort you put forth. I mean, at this point we lost friends there, and just everybody had their different opinions about what you should be doing, and they didn't want to change and all those different things. So he came to us and said, look, we want to do something with this company. We're either going to package up to raise money, or we're going to package up to sell, and we'd like to bring you in for that. And you're going to make even less friends here, and you're going to be, having information that other people don't have, but we really like to have you on that team.
Yeah, so during that time, we had we had a lot of transparency into the fate of the company. When we started going towards the sales side, a lot of the things that we talked about were, in the event of an acquisition, a lot of times what happens when you get gobbled up by really big companies, they select people and they give you retention kind of packages to stay on board, that sort of thing, or you get cut. And so we kind of planned for both of those scenarios, and we're like, if we were going to do something again, what would that be? Where do we see opportunities? How can we knew we really wanted to get back into solving a real problem, a pain point as we saw it, based on a lot of the districts that we worked with across the country. And that was, they're like, we're struggling to know what's working because the diversity of the needs of the student population are just getting more and more, because students and families are more transient, right? So you have a lot of students moving in and out of systems, and it's hard to keep pace. And so districts, with all the choices they have, is ensuring they've got the best tools, resources in educators' hands to make sure that they're able to service their students the best. So that was a thing that we kept hearing across the country, was they were really struggling with that and tying all of these choices to student outcomes. And so We didn't know how to solve that problem at that time, but we knew that was an area of need that we thought, with our backgrounds, we might be able to sort of come up with something that serviced that.
The other thing we noticed is, you know, I had been in sales at that point for almost 10 years. We had expanded sales, you know, to the Midwest, across the country, and it was a common theme amongst schools that we don't have any money. You know, so if you're a salesperson and you're calling educators, they'll always let you come see them, but they're going to tell you up front, but I don't have any money. And that is true. They have to stretch their dollars a lot, but basically our list of what we'd like to do became complaints that we brought to each other about, oh, we could just do this better only if, or you would see things like, you know, stacks of computers in the box over 6 months. Or you would see, oh, well, we're supposed to be doing this, but we're doing that. And in fact, Learning Earnings had a lot of data that proved that it worked. So you could literally raise a student's math achievement if you incentivize them, oddly enough. And so, but as we saw that, the cost of change in education is a lot too. So things would work for schools and they would throw it out, and they wouldn't work for schools and they just renew it all the time. There wasn't a lot of consistency between that.
Okay, so you notice this problem, but at the same time, you're working at this now big company, and they're offering you, I mean, they offer to like give you a lot more money to stay there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a good bit more. So why not stick with that?
It's a really funny story. So we go out and we're doing due diligence with this company, and they, you know, they're one of the most, no pun intended, powerful companies in K-12, and they have this Taj Mahal in Folsom, of all places, and so they're
California.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. The only other thing there is the prison. So, but we went out there and they're really pouring it on, and I mean they're getting ready to do press releases that basically say the whole reason we bought this company is for Learning Earnings, and they're, you know, taking us inside rooms and things like that. So they separated Adam and I, you know, put him in some technical meetings and myself in some other meetings, and we didn't see each other for the whole day. And at the end of the day, I thought, this is so great for Adam, but I don't want to stay here. But I don't know how to tell him, because we had just been partners in this, figuring this out, navigating this, and, you know, ever since he had really gotten there. And I think he actually was kind of having the same thought, but he didn't want to tell me. So we literally, at the end of the day, go to this kind of debriefing with our Chalkable people, and he was in the worst mood. He's never in a bad mood. He was in a worse mood. I was like, what in the world? So after this dinner, I came up to him, and if I ever have anything hard to say, I have to just blurt it out automatically, and I went, I don't want to stay here. And I wasn't even sure why or how much, but we had been talking about this. I was getting a little excited, but you had to know, like, I'd worked here for 15 years. It's actually my only career job. I had a family to support. I mean, I'm not that spontaneous. And not only that, but as they came in and they're like, oh, but this is how you do in the startup world, so I would be kind of annoyed even sometimes and be like, that's not the way the real world works. But they had gotten me in on the side, you know, like kind of pulled me into this idea, and I was like, you know, we can do this. And it was just big business. And I'd worked at my business for a long time, and I thought, what if I would have been doing something different for the past 2 years, or 3 years, or 5 years, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it just, you know, like Nicole said, it's a $1 billion corporation. So going into an organization like that's a totally different animal, right? I mean, there's like hundreds of layers, and things are very corporate, if you will, and they are in the business of making lots and lots of money, and they do, which is fine. That's their prerogative. But we really didn't feel like that was a place for us to be at that level. We wanted to stay closer down to, you know, with the customers, and build products, you know, and that's really like you'd be, you know, acting out somebody else's dream vision. That's really why what struck us is we wanted to build something that we thought could help and be useful, and sort of we knew we wouldn't be able to accomplish that goal there just because they already have all the people they need to do that, you know, and we were just getting gobbled up like everything else in the industry.
Adam did tell me, he said, Adam has a good pitch a lot of the times. He gets in pitch mode, but I'm like, hey, they're offering me this, senior VP of sales and this and that, and I'm like, such a good title, so good for my resume. And he's like, how does CEO sound for your resume?
Okay, so Adam was the one that was really trying to sell you on, let's go out and let's start this thing. We found this problem. We can go out and we can do this.
Yeah, I was like, look, you can be the top sales executive for $1 billion corporation anytime. Like you can't always be in a position to quit your job and go build something and try to make change. And that was sort of the start of the pitch, and she kind of like glazed over, and so I had to get him deeper and deeper, and so that's when I was like, well, what if we beat the title? We can be a CEO of a new company. How's that sound?
So you're starting to sell her on it. She goes and sits through these boring meetings, realizes this is not where I want to be. She comes to you. What do you say?
I said, let's do it.
Okay. All right. So y'all decide, and then timeline-wise, all right. So
we had a good rest of the week in Folsom.
I mean that's exciting and nerve-wracking at the same time. I mean you're getting paid a lot of money there, and then you're like, nope, I'm turning it in. Like I'm done. What is that feeling?
Not what I expected, in the sense that I thought, and Adam had done very well too about things that I read in books now, and I'm like, oh, you totally got that from that book. But he would say things like, think about the worst thing that could happen, which you hear a lot in startup grind and startup books and entrepreneur books. And I'd be like, okay, what's the worst thing? And if I couldn't get there, he'd be like, well, let me tell you what the worst thing is. He'd say, the worst thing is this doesn't work, and you get a job being the head of sales in one of these other 50, because the other thing that was happening is that other companies were coming after the both of us too, that might be more appealing than this one, but, he did a good job, and what's the worst thing that would happen? I'm going to say this knowing he might argue this. From that conversation, I was scared and excited, which I've already learned in my life, those are the two best things to be of the same thing. If you're scared and excited, it's a big opportunity, you can run with it. I think it wasn't until later that we had customers that I panicked.
Yeah.
It goes after that.
You go through, when you're starting a business, like it's awesome at the beginning, because you're just building, right? And you're not really answering anybody. And then all of a sudden, as soon as you get a customer, and they got a complaint because it's got to work, right? And then you got this like, oh, this is real, this whole like, because it's not as fun, because now you got to make people happy. They're giving you money, and so like that's really
which we did early.
And I kind of prepare Nicole and Jessica. We got two our team members here, Jessica and Laura, who are essential parts of our team, and I try to prepare both Nicole and Jessica. I'm like, you're gonna hit the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. And that is the nature of the beast, because and it's true, isn't it? I mean, some days, like every problem you have at the beginning, you think it's going to kill your company. You're like, oh, this didn't work or whatever, or we lost this deal. Everything seems like the end of the world, but that's just like the whole process is just getting through that, because you're going to be up, you got your first customer, and then oh my goodness, they don't like it, they found a bug, and then whatever, and so. That's the whole process of getting. You feel like you're getting, just torn one way or the other. But
y'all kind of did it, not backwards, but the startup way. And what probably drove you crazy was you started going out and selling something that you actually didn't have at that point.
Which has never been a problem for me.
Mm-hmm.
I've done that most of my career. Jessica's done that a lot of her career. But I think I did get envious when I look back now at other startups. Like, I'm like, don't worry about it when you pre-launch, have fun, hit the grind, because it is a different world when you have customers. We did go out and start selling immediately, and very cautiously too, because I'd worked in education at that point for a long time, and I was like, I felt a personal responsibility, and this is why we're a good team, because Adam had been in education at that point, his family had been in education. I was like, I don't want to get a bad reputation. I'm not going to let a product give a bad reputation. But selling something that doesn't exist is not really part of that, not up front. What was different for me is that I had to go sell during the day, and then the other part of the day, I had to help product design and then implement it, and we're still doing some of those things. And so it is nice to think back in those days where you're just doing sales.
Well, yeah, and then the interesting thing about this project versus other ones is that there was no roadmap right? There's nothing out there that's already out there that we're copying. It's like, great, if you're gonna build a chair, you know pretty much what a chair looks like, what it's supposed to do. But we would start talking to potential customers, initially in Alabama, and be like, okay, so, what if we could build something that helps you understand what is correlating highest to student success for certain subgroup populations? Like, yeah, that's great. Like, all right, so what does it need to do? And they're like, I don't know. Like, you're the one talking. That's kind of the way the conversations went. We knew that everybody was a big need, but they're like, nobody really knew what it looked like. And so we just really had to get out there and have, and poor Jessica, we're like, all right, get another appointment, talk to somebody. We need feedback on this is what we're thinking, and trying to isolate and, exactly how the product needs to work so that it's scalable, but it's also helps solve the real pain point, right? And first it was like financial. Can we help you find money that you've spent that's been like misallocated? That was an angle. And then it was like more looking at growth of students and tying it down into the student achievement. So we kind of did the typical startup process of meandering around an idea till we really honed in. And the only way you can truthfully do that is to get in front of educators, at least in the education market, and talk to them and say, like, what are your problems? Like, how can we help? Like, we're here, we want to build something, and just take that feedback to heart and get it back in front of them and kind of continue through that process.
Okay, and then during this time, so you raise a round of funding, and at the same time, you're applying for Y Combinator. And so, if y'all don't know what Y Combinator is, it's a 3-month accelerator. They give you $150,000 for 7% of your company. You meet a bunch of really cool people, Airbnb, Dropbox, Reddit, who's some of the other people that they've probably heard of coming out of there?
Twitch, just got bought by Amazon last year. Their portfolio companies is about like 120 billion is sort of like their investment.
And so you go through this 3-month program, and then at the end of the 3-month program, you pitch to 3,000 investors, and these are pretty big investors. I mean, they're the real deal. That's as real as it gets at that point. Okay, so you apply the first time. How did that go?
So Adam comes to me and he's like, hey, there's this Y Combinator thing, and somebody I think had suggested it to him, let's do this, and I'm like, okay, what do we have to do? We have to do this application. The funny thing is, the first time we did the application, I'm like, oh, this is a good exercise. We probably should know some of these things. So that was the first part. We had to do a video. You have to do like a 1-minute video, which I think the first time we applied, we probably did 52 takes or so, of the video.
A 1-minute video.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which took more than 52 minutes.
Easily 52.
Yeah.
Like, we couldn't make it through the first 15 seconds without somebody laughing. That's how you think it sounds so easy, but like if you get in front of a camera and you're like, all right, tell everything you want to do, like give somebody give you $150,000 in 1 minute, and you're just like deer in the headlights.
First, I'm like, this is absurd.
Yeah.
And one thing is I've always worked in education. I'm from the South. We don't do anything in a minute. Nothing. I'm like, there's no way these people can tell. And I, as you know already by this point, I have no poker face at all. For a salesperson, that is a terrible, terrible characteristic to have. I had no poker face. So there'd be many times where he'd be like, take 52, and I'd be like, can't do the video.
Yeah,
and our application process went as well as those 52 takes. So we were declined on the first application.
So declined, but 6 months later, you get an email that says, hey, you actually did better than I guess you thought you did.
Right.
So, Adam, how did getting declined? You don't handle rejection well.
Yeah, evidently. Like, I learned a lesson about myself. Like that really ticked me off. Like, I was offended that that they didn't see the dream.
He said it was because we're from the South.
Yeah, I thought it was bias.
Age discrimination. He's like, oh, they probably think we're too old, or.
Cause like in Silicon Valley, California, like they're funding like anybody who's like 18, 19, 20 years old, whatever. And I was like, we got declined. I was like, yep, totally. They could have called that.
Yeah. Okay, so you get rejected, and the second time you're like, all right, I guess we'll give it a second go around. Because I told you the 10% thing, and y'all actually felt a lot more confident this time.
Yeah, we got email said you made it to the top 10% out of like at that point it was like 8,500.
He's like, I knew it.
So I was like, maybe so. They reeled me back in.
Yeah.
So we revamped our thing and maybe did like 80 takes this time instead of like 120. and sent it in, and like we're like, oh, we're in, you know, we're money this time.
Yeah.
Cut our application in half,
Yeah.
the length in half.
How many takes for the video this time?
Not as many, but a lot still. The second time was a lot.
And the second time I was mad because in the video I had some crazy hair thing.
Yeah, the best I did was the one that I wanted to do, and she had like some hair issue, but that wasn't a big concern of mine.
He was the one uploading the video, so that's
Okay.
the one that's the one.
That was like,
he
yeah, I
sent.
totally did number 3, I did number 1. You know?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you post that, and then you get the result. Oh no, actually, y'all got a phone interview that time.
Yeah. So we got like the process is like you wait. You know, you submit your thing, you wait, and then like you'll either get this email that says, "Hey, you're invited to California, all expenses paid to interview with the partners," or you get a declination or you get declined. And so we got an email that said, "Hey, we want to do a video interview with you." So that was like, we're like, oh, that's such a good sign, you know. And incidentally, we had the guy that was interviewing us was the very first employee of Yahoo. He was the guy, the founder was Jerry Yang, and then he called this guy up who was in grad school, and this guy wrote the business plan, and that's how they started Yahoo. And so,
What's his name?
Tim Brady.
Tim Brady. Okay. All right. So you interview, and then how long do you have to wait? Because you eventually get declined for that one as well.
Yeah, it was like, I mean, we thought we killed this thing, you know, like he didn't ask anything we didn't know, whatever. And he's a big education investor, so you know he's very knowledgeable about space, so that was a plus. And so it's like 2 weeks after that, and then like at night, you know, it always comes at night because they're on West Coast time, so it's like 8 or 9 o'clock, and you're refreshing your email like obsessively, and then it's like decline.
Yeah. Pisses you off again.
Oh yeah, I was like, it's total age discrimination. Like I was convinced now, like I was like getting that far, like I'm too old to be doing this, evidently. So.
All right. So that second time around, this whole time though, y'all are running this company at this point, and y'all are doing it successfully. I mean, you're starting to actually see customers, you've got revenue, and so y'all are really getting busy. But then 6 months later, the application opens up again, and did they send another email for the 10% again?
They did.
Yeah, they did, and I just deleted
Adam's
it.
like, I hadn't gotten any younger. I hadn't gotten any younger since the last time.
Yeah, I was like, I'm getting older, more gray, so I mean, like they're gonna decline. We're not doing it.
Yes.
We got the email, and I didn't know a lot about Y Combinator at all. I didn't learn until much later how big of a deal it is, but we got the email. He's like, oh, we're in the top 10% again, you know. And so he didn't say anything about it, and then we were traveling one night, and he goes, well, do you just want to do the application again? And I'm like, okay, because I didn't think we were going to get it. And then he also goes, okay, I'll do it, but we're only going to do one take of the video. And I was like, okay. Like I was tired, we had stuff the next day. I do think we wound up doing 2 takes, but that's it. We cut the application in half again.
Okay, so you cut it in half again, and you went with the first take, right? Even though you did it
Yeah.
twice.
Yeah.
And I've seen the video, and you just randomly scream in the middle of the video. Like, it seems like it should be something serious, and
Yeah.
you just scream in the middle of the video.
I was excited. Yeah, like it was like one of those things where I was like, we have nothing to lose. These guys hate us. So,
Yeah, I think he was maybe being slightly antagonistic. It was very random. It was like, woo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you scream, and then y'all get an email X amount of days later for another interview.
Yep.
And
Another video
You
interview.
do not feel good about this one.
No, because it was like with the, so, you know, most people have heard of Airbnb nowadays. It was their head of growth, which is like employee number 2 or 3. You know, this guy's like, you know, marketing genius kind of thing. And, you know, we actually had a sales, we're in Lawrence County, meeting with the school district. And like after the meeting, we had to ask the superintendent, like, hey, can we borrow your boardroom because we have this video call with these, you know, things like, you know, venture capitalists in Silicon Valley. And he's like, what did you just say? And so he's like, yeah, sure, whatever. So he's a great guy. And we actually sat in a school district boardroom and did the video interview from there because it was either that or the car. And we didn't think that was the best place. So.
And this one, even the second one, you actually felt good about. This one didn't feel good about, and you were like, "Well, this is done." I mean, you'd given up. At this
Yeah. I mean, I was like, I told you we shouldn't have done that. You know.
Yeah,
Like,
I'm old.
We didn't even really, I don't feel like like the first time definitely, and a lot of the second time, like what day did they tell? You know, I don't even feel like the third time we were really paying that much attention until
Yeah.
that night.
Yeah, and it's that night, and then I was starting to get, I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't know if we get in kind of thing, I was like being honest with myself. But it was weird because we were sitting at dinner, and like a guy whose company got bought by SCI as well, that we were friends with, had applied, and he sent me a text, and it had his acceptance thing. I was like, I didn't even know he had applied. And so they had got in, and so then I really wanted to get in, because I did not want to get beat out by this other guy. So, then it goes step refresh. I mean, you like do it.
Oh, he was like, he probably had a callus on his thumb, and I'm trying to ignore it. I think we were at dinner and trying to talk about whatever's the next day, and we were in Birmingham. He's refreshing, and also in the meantime, I had moved from Baldwin County to Huntsville, so this is right after that. I moved there right before school started, and I didn't think we were going to get in.
Yeah, and so about 9:00 p.m. it came in and said you're invited to California to come interview with the partners.
Okay, so now you're flying out there. You got to go interview. You're told you got 10 minutes to interview. Is that correct? All right. So what kind of preparation did you do? What were you expecting from that? What were how did that go? What's some horror stories from that?
So like I over prepare. That's just kind of what I do, and
I'm more on the fly.
I'm like. So we had this kind of bitter battle for the next 2 weeks. I'm like, you have to take this seriously. They
I was in boot
cannot
camp.
fly, by the seat of your pants, because these are professional like investors, and they're highly successful people, built great companies and that sort of thing. And their sole job is in 10 minutes, because they make the decision that day, you're in or you're out, is to separate the wheat from the chaff. And because they're like all day long for 2 days, 10-minute interviews. And there's always horror stories like, the types of questions. So I'm trying to I make this book.
He made a study guide for me.
Yeah, literally.
And I did fast drill, rapid fire questions.
And these people, I mean, they'll cut you off. You're answering a question, and if you're taking too long, or if they don't like what they're hearing, they'll just cut you off.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we heard horror stories like, you better know your number, and make sure you say your market value is high enough but not too high. Like things that you would come out of conversations with people, and you'd have more questions than you kind of feel good about part of it, and you're like, well, is this the right thing to say, or is this? And Adam's big thing was, everybody said they'll cut you off, and he's like, Nicole, when they cut you off, you've got to quit talking.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, you got to say not let it build to what you're saying. You got to get to the meat, say it, because if they cut you off, you don't get your point, because they don't have time to mess around. And so that was the big. I mean, we were on the plane so much, so she got up and moved to a different seat because she didn't like the way I was like mock interviewing her.
Because I was like getting a little tired, and then I would say, well, y'all, and he's like, it's not y'all, it's you all, don't say it like that.
Yeah.
And so it just, I did. I got up and moved.
Yeah. So it was interesting getting up into the thing or whatever, but
That might have been though when, at some point during this thing, we're going to the interview, and you would never ask this question, but he goes, what are you going to wear to the interview? And I'm like, he never asked that. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I was like, well, and he's like, so you can't wear your heels. And I'm like, what? And he said, I don't, this is West Coast. This is like, we're going to Mountain View, and they're going to take you seriously. And I'm like, well, every time I want to be taken seriously, I wear heels.
Yeah.
And he's like, I really think, and so my feelings kind of got hurt a little bit. And then he was serious. I was like, I don't even know that I have non-heels to wear.
True story.
So we are getting ready to the interview, and I'm trying to be, we also had this really funny thing. We had t-shirts because we were a real company. So we're like calling anybody we know that's been through this process, and we're like, is it cool to wear your t-shirt? Or if we walk in and our t-shirts are going to be like, oh, they're the ones wearing their t-shirts. Yeah. So we were really stressing over that, and I'm stressing over like I don't even know how to walk in flat shoes, and so how's this going to go? And we decided to wear our t-shirts. So I put this t-shirt on, put my jeans on, put these flats on. I was like, I'm not doing this. So I come over right before we're about to leave, and I had probably the highest heels I could possibly put on. And I think he heard me coming down the hall, and he's like, that's what you're going to wear? And I was like, yes, I'm confident. I'm like, I'm not letting Adam talk to me. I've got this t-shirt on. And he goes, all right, But if we don't get in, you're always going to be wondering because you wear those heels.
All right, so you go through the interview, y'all get the call that night, you get in. The next day you do your onboarding, and they tell you right then, hey, so at the time it was $120,000, right?
Yeah.
So they give you this $120,000 and they say, do with it whatever you want. Like, we're not the police of that, you do whatever you want to with it. Okay, so then you go back a month later, and it's kind of transition, and it's focused on like a month at a time, right? So the first month, you're kind of really focusing on your idea, and then really the rest of the time, you're focusing on demo day. So two quick stories about things that actually happened while you were there. So what is the process like? And then I want to hear the story of the Gmail guy. And so, yeah, so tell us about what it was like actually when you got there.
So like that, just quickly on the onboarding thing, so there's like 7,000 to 9,000 applications worldwide that come in every single batch, right? And they have 2 batches a year. And so your likelihood of getting in is better. It's more likely to get into Harvard than it is to get into one of these batches, and because that's how competitive it is. And so we really felt out of our league, honestly, because when you get in on onboarding, you start talking to some of these people. I mean, these are highly accomplished people and super driven and like genius level smart. Like, you know, every conversation you're like, I'm obviously not the smartest person in this conversation, you know? So it's like super intimidating a little bit on the things because like all these people are like, you know, just killing it, and you're just like, wow, you know? But it's super energizing too because you're like around people that are like just trying to change the world because they're doing everything from like bioengineering different kind of molecules to like, you know, building the next Facebook. So it's like all kinds of different people from, I think there's like 12 different countries represented. So we had a lot of Europeans that were in our batch. So it's a very diverse group with a lot of different passions.
And y'all are the only company from Alabama ever. I mean, I don't know in the Southeast, but definitely Alabama. Y'all are the only company from Alabama that's ever done. So.
Yeah, I think they've had a few from Atlanta, but the only Alabama company.
Yeah.
I mean, and we didn't know, like we were sitting at dinner maybe the second night in San Fran, coming back from there, and you know, somebody called, and I'm like, yeah, Y Combinator or whatever, and the like 2 or 3 tables next to us, he gets up to go to the restroom or something, and they're like, hey, did you say Y Combinator? Like, congratulations. Hey, she got in Y Combinator. And I'm like, what in the world kind of cult have I joined? Like, I don't even know. Like, I had to start paying attention to.
Like, even after we got in, Nicole was kind of like, you know, like, you say it's cool, but, like, not a lot of people know about it, you know, in the Southeast. Like,
Lots of flats at Y Combinator.
Like, I actually, after we got in, we got the acceptance, we actually had to go to, I had to take her to lunch with Andy and Brandon and be like, have them be like, yes, this is like a great thing, you know, like you should do this.
Well, the other thing was, so I just moved to Huntsville. We had just like officially decided to found the company here.
She's like, you can't wear heels? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, what kind of place is this? But, and just really fell in love with it. But I called my sister, I'm like, hey, you can move to Huntsville with me? Because I'm going to be gone for 3 months. So it was quite the transition there, and I really just didn't know. I mean, I had been in the same job for 15 years. Every day was something new for me.
Yeah.
So it's like, hey, you want to quit your job and start this company? Yeah, I actually could get there. Hey, moved to Huntsville, or I found the company. Yeah, I could get there. Hey, now you want to move to San Francisco and do Y Combinator? And I'm like, okay, yeah. Now we can do that.
So one funny thing is, like, before the interview, like, she's like, well, who's going to be in this interview? And so I was like, well, let's pull up the partner list, right? And we're reading through these guys, you know, and like, blah, 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 you know, founded this thing you've heard of or whatever. And one of the dudes was, this guy's like Paul Buchheit, and it's like he created Gmail, you know.
Like everybody else has this long biography, and this is like,
right?
He created Gmail.
And then he's got this long list of accolades after that. And so I was like, oh my goodness. And so we started freaking out, like, you know, the guy who created Gmail could be one of the guys interviewing us. And so he wasn't in our interview, but we met him not too long after that.
Thank goodness, he wasn't.
Yeah, so what was that like meeting them?
So we did these things. So, you know, we onboard, and they used to have like 20 companies, and then they had 40. There was 160 in our batch. But their thing is to kind of do these group meetings with your mentor every other week, and then you have office hours with your mentors and other partners in the group, and then you do these dinners every single week. So there used to be dinners of 20 at a family table, and now they've tried to replicate that with all these people. And so in the group meeting one day, we had our same people. So we had Tim Brady, which is the first Yahoo employee. We had, what was his name from Pebble? Eric, first smartwatch founder. He has a great story. And then we had a couple fill-in people. Well, I guess a couple weeks in, so the most nerve-wracking thing about YC is you go into these group meetings and they want you to get like your, who you are, what are you doing, and they want you to get it exactly perfect. And what you're training for is really all these one-on-ones with these investors that you're going to pass like Joe Montana in the hallway, and he's going to be like, what are you doing? And you got to be able to say it right away, and it's very difficult for me because it's like 2 sentences.
They call it the one-liner, her one-liner is like 32 lines.
yeah. So, I mean, I would get beat up every week, and the other thing was we were in education, and so we felt like we had to over-explain because in some sense we were a little bit like the stepchildren. Like people say, oh, what are you doing in education? Oh, that's hard to fund. We would get that all the time. So we're in this group meeting, and our partners the people are so amazing. Gosh, they're just like, you walk out of everything just feeling so great. And this guy walks in one day. We think he's one of the companies. So he walks in, and he's, wearing these red Sally Jesse Raphael, if anybody knows who that is, glasses. He's wearing head to toe, all matching, like windsuit, kind of Adidas thing, and these yellow bright shoes. And he jumps up in the chair, and he gets Indian style, and he's like, tell me what you're doing. And so go through the one-liner, and he's like, I don't understand. And I, said it a different way. He's like, I don't understand what you're doing. I said it a different way. And finally, Adam's like, what don't you understand? Kind of like taken up for me, right? We don't know who this guy is. We actually think he's another company. Yeah. So him and this guy go back and forth, kind of aggressively, and that's also not Adam's usual demeanor. And so we get out of the group meeting, and he's like, go ask. I want to know who that is right now. Go ask somebody who that is. So I go ask, and I am like, I cannot, again, no poker face. I'm like walking all the way back, and he goes, who was it? I'm going to talk to him. I was like, he created Gmail.
So the guy knew what he was talking about.
Yeah. Well, not in this instance, but yeah.
Okay, so you meet the Gmail guy. So you're going through the whole time, and then you're prepping for demo day. So what is demo day? What does that process look like?
So it's kind of interesting too on this prep thing because again you only have a couple minutes, so you've really got to boil down and building up to, like, you can't tell your story. It's really sort of like bam, 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 and it's a 3,000 investors kind of deal, and that's your only shot, right? Without a lot of follow up and hard work. So it's extremely stressful, especially when you look at the other people that are presenting around you, because as Nicole said, education is not necessarily the sexiest kind of thing for a lot of investors, especially West Coast investors. They want to fund the next Facebook and that sort of thing. They view education as longer sales cycles and that sort of thing. So you're competing for those dollars against those kind of people. So that's kind of the backdrop of sort of the prep, and the people are telling us this. They're like, you got to knock their socks off in 2 minutes, but don't say too much. It's kind of saying, how do you thread that needle?
The other thing we were challenged with is that some education companies you might recognize, Remind, Class Dojo, there have been a lot of freemium models that were heavily funded in the past couple years, and they hadn't really made it to the monetization point. So even the education investors that are interested, that you're fighting against that. They've kind of been cooled down by that process, some of those companies.
Okay. All right, so you do demo day. Nicole, you did the pitch there. I asked you before, but you said right before you didn't have it. Do you have that pitch?
I don't have it, but let's see if I can remember some of it, and maybe Adam can fill it in. It's like, what else is super funny is you literally walk up on the stage, black backdrop, and you see, all these people, and there's other thousands of people online, and you're seeing these people that they're kind of like your family now, but in a very Motley Crue kind of way. You have these new best friends, and they're all different backgrounds, and everybody's so nervous. And I almost never get nervous. Like, almost never. I was nervous. Like, I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to look at anybody. I really just wanted to get out there and do it. And the other funny thing is, Adam, right before we go, he goes, so you're only one person can get on the stage, and your co-founder has to stand in front of the stage. And he's like, what do I do? And I'm like, what are you talking? I'm so like, I'm like, what are you talking about? What do you do? He's like, I put my hands on my hips, I stand my side, I smile, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
So it was probably something like, hi, I'm Nicole. This is my co-founder, Adam. We're Glimpse. Every year, over $700 billion is spent in education. The problem with that is over 40% of that money doesn't have a high return. I don't know, it was something like that, What else?
There's a little bit about the solution, about the platform that was built and how we were kind of triangulating around that problem.
I remember the line I missed. You always remember the line you missed. So you actually do Alumni Day the day before, which was my best pitch. So anybody who's ever been in YC, a lot of successful business people at that point, and founders and investors come to that. And one of the best lines, because again, we're trying to be sexy, we're trying to appeal to the business people, was, you wouldn't invest in your portfolio without measuring the return, and we don't expect education to either. It's the best line. Totally forgot it. Totally forgot it. But I did say we are Glimpse, and we are changing spending in education. I do remember saying that.
Dropped the mic and left the stage. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, all right, so is there, because we're getting close to the end here before we do some questions, anything else big from that that's definitely like you gotta mention it? Do really quick, it was interesting hearing about the difference between West Coast lifestyle and then here lifestyle. You've got kids and our mental, we do 8 to 5 and they just do it all kind of thing.
Yeah. So it's, I've talked to a lot of people about this, but there it's like, I kind of equate it, and there's certain population centers, throughout the country that are like this, but take the 5 or 10 people that, you think are super influential in your life or super successful and they're just really, going after it. That's there's thousands and thousands of people that you're running every day that are like that. Like everybody we were running with out there was like that. And so you constantly felt like, there's that saying, you're the average of the 5 people you hang around the most, right? And there it's it's the 5,000 people. There's just that many people that are all doing the same thing, chasing different dreams and passions. So it's very energizing, and they're very, this whole concept of work-life balance is sort of, it kills me in the startup world, there is no work-life balance the first couple of years. There's no, that's just not the way it works, right? But what there is there, you love what you do, right? And that's why you gotta, it sounds cliche, but it's totally true. You gotta be passionate about what you're doing, because otherwise it's not worth it. Because you're gonna make some sacrifices at home, right? But when you're around how they do it out there is they're very accommodating for around family. So meetings happen, everybody's gotta run, pick up your kids, whatever, and they gotta make it back to Oakland because it's too expensive to live in San Fran. And they have meetings at night, right? So that everybody can sort of get a little bit of that balance. But it's not about, the mentality is different because they're drive and very driven in doing, but everybody's like that. Versus here, it's not quite like that. It's oh, well, the bell rang, it's 5, I gotta go home.
Yeah.
And if the work's not done, that's just not the way it operates out there.
It's interesting too, that's very true, and it's very true about the women too. It's just second nature. So, moms are still getting to things, dads are still getting to things, and both are still giving up some things. So, where sometimes we do still have a focus based on where we are and some typical behaviors that, we can do that, but we're not the majority of people doing that. And it's really on both sides. We see oh, dad can't make it again tonight and those kind of things, and they just make it work. And the dynamic is different, the way the businesses work is different, and the way people see oh, I can't be here, but I know I'm going to be here at a certain time. I think it is a lot more progressive, and something that we should definitely focus on here and bring that back to. It's about being accommodating, but it's also about it being okay to be a working parent and not to be at every single thing.
Okay, so between the two last days, there was $300 million given out in deals in 2 days for those last 2 demo days. Y'all took on some investment there as well, and so that was close to a year ago, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so y'all have been doing it for a year. Helped? You think it was a good idea to go through Y Combinator?
Oh my goodness. I would say for me, and Adam tells me this all the time, I'm probably spoiled for raising money because, you know, after I agreed to do this, Adam starts giving me worst case scenarios, right? And so he's like, hey, you know, potential investors are going to be like this and they're going to be like this. And we have the most amazing investors. Like, we look forward to the calls. They are actually helpful. They do the intros that they promise. And he says, like, I'm spoiled doing the fundraising coming out of Y Combinator because we had to turn money down, you know, and which was hard because we talked about it and we talked about the amount and like, then we talked about like the absolute amount. And then we get all these really savvy investors and they're like, yeah, but we only write, you know, $5 to $8 million checks. And I'm like, am I still supposed to tell them no thank you?
Yeah, and just one really funny anecdote that just popped in my head. So like after Nicole and Jessica put in their notice to quit, I hadn't quit yet technically, and I was trying to quit and I was trying to trigger my severance package, but they were fighting me on that, and so you know, we got declined by Y Combinator, and we were trying to raise a little bit of money or whatever, and so. Then I thought it was maybe a good thing to start telling them. I was like, well, look, if we run out of money, this is going to tell you how, you know, you can live through it. Because Larry and I ran out of money. We died like 3 times. I mean, like literally deathbed type of thing. You know, rolling payroll on credit cards, you name it. You know, I got to check all of the terrible boxes the first time around. And so they're like, what do you mean run out of money? Like, you can run out of money? And I was like, well, yeah. And so then we started like kind of doing like that's what we got to sell. And they're like, we don't have anything to sell. I'm like, we'll solve that too.
Yeah.
You know, and that's kind of, you just got to put the, you know, blinders on and go.
And on the other side of that, Jessica and I would always say, well, you know, how are we going to do this? You know, we'd be talking about, how are we going to correlate this to that? And he'd say, oh, it's just data. It's just data. So we start selling, and we bring these big contracts back, and he's like, I don't know how we're going to do this. And we're like, it's just data. So that comes on both sides.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, guys, we're probably gone over actually. Any questions from out there?
I have one.
Yeah.
This is for Nicole. What is the one piece of advice you would give younger females that are trying to get to where you are?
Oh, that one is probably not as sexy as it needs to be, but do it. You know, I think that I was very lucky to have some people around me that were supportive and kind of had the confidence to do that. And, you know, don't work for somebody else the whole time. Don't second guess yourself. And like we talk about with family, with adversity in your life or whatever, it's almost just as hard to go to that job to work for somebody else as it is to do this a lot of the times, right? Almost. So yeah, I mean, not to be cliche, but you should go out there and do it.
What you got?
Being in the education space, what is a couple underrated aspects of it when you go to seek any additional funding? What's a couple underrated aspects that you feel you still need to kind of break through to whoever you're speaking to?
Well, one of the great things about education is if you have a decent product, you know, you may have a little bit longer sales cycle because it's very much like government sales in a sense, but it's very sticky. So once you can get in, there's this inertia that they'll continue to buy a lot of the same things. So from a potential investor standpoint, that's very attractive to them because the revenue is very sticky. So that's one that comes to mind right off the top of my head.
What you got?
What kind of technology or trend are you most excited about in the education space in the next decade or so?
Oh, that's really good. I'd say we're really excited about
Glimpse is
platforms that can measure student outcomes against expenditures. Now we say that.
There's a way to do that.
Yeah, it is funny because like some people, and oh, this is interesting. We would pitch investors, and they'd be like, "Wait, they don't already do that? They don't measure what they use?" Now, in education, we measure students, we measure teachers, we measure principals, we give report cards, all those things. They don't measure their spending. I would say.
Well, the thing that I'm kind of most interested in at the moment is looking at leveraging a lot of data to everything in education. In healthcare was like this, a decade ago when I was in healthcare, but is retrospective. So we do a bunch of assessments and we look what happened, right? And that's like kind of like looking in the rearview mirror. But we've got enough data and enough things now, data points, I think, that we can do a lot more prospective. Like early warning systems are one, and looking at trends in student performance and proficiency levels, and we've actually aggregated enough data that I think we can start doing a lot of predictive type of things to help teachers anticipate over the summer the problems they're going to encounter come fall, versus having to wait 45, 60 days into the year to be like, oh my goodness, like this is the cards that have been dealt. So that's what I'm sort of most excited about, is the more and more we can help give a forward-looking view to educators, they'll be able to plan better, react better, and service the students better ultimately.
The thing is, there's great technology in education. We just, and I'll say not just in education, almost as a society have to learn how to use it. And so you hear a lot today about virtual learning, personalized learning, and what have you, but you go into a lot of scenarios and it's still a class of 30 students all doing the same thing. So I think what I'm excited about is kind of educators willing to let go of that same typical environment and the way they teach and access to education, particularly in K-12, because we talk about that a lot in secondary, and I think we have made some waves there. In K-12, we have all the access to do that, but if I am a young pregnant girl in high school, there's no reason that I should not finish my degree with all the virtual learning and all the other resources and access. The same thing if I have to work and support my family, even my parents or things like that, or if I'm a child who is sick a lot. There's really no reason in today's day and age that I can't accelerate even with those adversities.
One more, I forgot. One more. Or that's around. No, Wolf, what you got?
So Nicole, earlier you said that you were scared and excited in the beginning, and now once you brought on customers, it gets a little more anxious. How do you continue that scared, exciting, fun feeling even today with all the customers and all the success you guys have accomplished thus far?
It's really easy, and I can think about moments now in my life that I remember the first time I saw our software work, and I literally will be so teary-eyed about it. I'm like, it danced, it works, it's alive, and so there's those moments. I think, early on you switch from those moments, and I know a lot of y'all in any position you're at now, you have those late afternoon and those nights where you're just like, I just can't fix this, I don't see the solution or whatever. Sleep really helps, because you wake up in the morning and it's true, it's not as bad as you thought the day before, and you have clarity. That's all in the beginning. What you have in the position that we're at, we're still kind of in that startup phase, but now we have what I call real problems. And so, we have like customers that really need this and we can't figure out how to get it to them, or they're really eager but they're not really participating. And so those ups and downs are coming with the cycles that are put in our company, and we've had several this week. So we've been really active for about a year now. So we have clients now that are about to pay their recurring invoice. So it's like every single month brings something to be anxious about. And we were just at a board meeting last night in Morgan County, not far from here, and they're like, we are so grateful for what you do, and they vote to accept us not once, but now twice. So it's kind of like, oh, they really, really do value it, and they really like it. And then the next day I wake up and I'm like, oh my goodness, what are we going to do for them next? And so I think if you are being progressive at any point, those highs and lows are going to happen naturally. Because the night before that, I've been like, oh my goodness, are we going to get that contract renewal? And it just happens. And then you wake up and you see somebody's competitive market out there. You know, all of a sudden everybody in education is saying ROI. So then that instills panic. And you're like, oh gosh, what are we going to do? And then you know what you're going to do? You're going to do what you set out to do and listen to your customers. I don't know if this is just education or if it happens in other industries. They will help you fix it. They are there about the solution. It is what is, you know, in them. It's about everything they do. So I don't know if we're just really lucky to be in an industry where they all know we're not perfect. They're just looking for that solution.
So they become partners effectively in your product?
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's very interesting, and I kind of learned this back at Chalkable before too. You know, you have to decipher when a customer says they want something, what do they really want and what will really be valuable. And I think education is not different from that. You know, I'll say, I really want to be able to, you know, grade on the fly. You know, and you got to figure out what that means and what really would be valuable. But they absolutely become partners.
Well, guys, thank you all so much for sitting down with us in this crappy weather. It's been a whole lot of fun, and yeah, thank y'all. I guess that's it. Michael, is there anything else after this?
That's it. Everybody go. I think Matt is going to talk about. He went over to TechCrunch Disrupt. They did a hackathon and got in over there, and so he's talking about that. I don't know where he is in the building somewhere. Find him.
All right.
Let's hang out, network, and get stuff done.
All right. Cool.
Thanks,
Thank y'all.
y'all.
Thanks.